But anyway, I also wanted to talk about some of the more recent difficulties that we've had in our marriage, because I know that the main videos that John posts are about his Celebrate Recovery experience and the issues that he's dealt with in the past and why that led to his addiction with pornography and how that affected our relationship. And I knew about this from almost the beginning. It was never a secret. It's something that we thought about a lot in the beginning, but after a while I just kind of accepted that that was a part of who he was, and I didn't really feel like it was such a big deal. But you know, maybe 2 years ago or so, after we had our second child, and John was just really going through a hard time at work. He was very stressed out. I feel like that's when the addiction got so much worse, and it was just consuming him almost. And I really felt like I was losing him. He was becoming very secretive with his phone, and I'm not the type that goes through anyone's phone or anything like that, but it broke my heart for him to see him being so consumed. And I knew that it was nothing personal. I knew that this had nothing to do with me, but it still hurts, you know, as a woman, or you know, as a man, if your partner is going through that. It really hurts, and I don't care how confident of a person you are, but it was really hurting our marriage. And John was trying to read Every Man's Battle on his own, and he knew that he needed to do something about it, but I also knew that I just knew that he wouldn't be able to help himself. I was looking up maybe counselors that he could talk to, and I knew that he didn't want to go to a counselor. So I was just becoming very hopeless in this marriage, and I felt like we were going in the direction of a divorce because it was just so insidious, and it was just pulling us apart. And one day, one of our really good friends, Pastor Bob, came to our house, and I opened up to him, and I told him what was going on, and this is not something that we really were open about with anyone. And he suggested Celebrate Recovery. And that same day, was it the same day?
Yeah.
That same day, John got up and went to Celebrate Recovery, his first meeting, and that was probably almost a year ago, right?
10 months.
10 months ago. And so him doing that same day that he found out about it, it really showed me actually how bad it was, because it seemed like he was desperate to get help. And I was so proud of him, and I am so proud of him, because like I said earlier, John is very prideful, and it's hard for him to admit when he's wrong, or you know, that kind of thing, which I think is common for guys, but he did that, and he's been doing that ever since. And he goes to his 12-step meetings, and he's just really trying to help himself. And now, how long has it been? You just got your 8-month chip?
No, got my 9-month chip. I'll be getting my 10-month chip this Wednesday.
Yeah. So I am just so proud of him. And I just wanted to encourage you out there, if you're going through this, you know, there are going to be ups and downs, even when, you know, they're going through this process. And you might hear things that are going to be so hard for you to hear, because John has told me some things that were very hard for me to hear. And I'm a very secure woman, but it was still hard for me to hear these things. But I encourage you to stick together. to support them because they need that support, and to be willing to forgive. And I just wanted to share that because I know that there are a lot of women out there going through a rough time, and this affects the whole family. It's not something that's just them, it affects the whole family. But like I said, I just think it's really important to be open and willing to forgive, and to encourage them and let them know that you're proud of them, and to not put them down. So, is there anything that you wanted to say?
Well, the key is that you would be surprised or not surprised just how many people have this same issue. And you're only as sick as your biggest secret, and this was my biggest secret, and it wasn't even a well-kept secret, at least not from my wife. But once it's out in the open, what is there? If you can get past the initial embarrassment, which there will be, and past the initial shame, which there will be, and if anybody that struggled with pornography and lust knows all about shame and guilt and embarrassment, but once it's out in the open and you choose to work through it and put it behind you, and pornography is not an issue for me anymore, and it's not something I have to deal with. Other things that were the core causes of my need, or my what I felt my need was to seek out whatever I was seeking out. Those are the things that I'm working on now, and like any addiction, it's my tool to cope could have easily have been alcohol or drugs or anything else, and it just so happened that because of things that happened when I was younger, sexual and physical abuse, I'm sure that had an effect on my quote-unquote drug of choice because of my skewed understanding or sense of reality when it came to sexual relationships. And it's not something that I'm proud of. I'm very proud. I'm not ashamed to admit that I had a problem and that I'm working through that problem. Nobody's saying be proud of the problem, but something that I've learned, especially through CR, Celebrate Recovery, and this is the reason why I think there's nothing wrong with any recovery program. If it can help you, then by all means, whatever you can use to help yourself is great. But this is why I think a real recovery program has to be a Christ-centered program. Is once it's out of the darkness and into the light, it's not an issue anymore. And I went into these things thinking I'm the only one with this problem, and I walked into a room and initially with 15 other guys, and of those 15 guys, 11 of them had the same issue that I have. And that's 11 people in a small town on one Saturday night, way back in August of 2014 or 2016. And when you realize you're not the only one dealing with it, and when you realize that there are ways to get through it, and other things that I'm learning, like Brianne spoke of, is you may hear things that you don't like and that are going to hurt you. And the only thing I can say is I'm not suggesting that anybody keep secrets. It's just because keeping secrets is what probably got you into the problem in the first place. But I'm suggesting that you be just a little bit more diplomatic on the things that you share. You know, there's things that you're working through that, you know, that's part of what CR is about, and part of what 12-step recovery program is about, is that you are sharing these things with people. And, you know, it's not to keep secrets from your wife or anything like that, but, you know, you don't want to hurt somebody else just to get things off your chest. And I've learned that there's certain things that, you know, and she's even stated directly, you know, that there's certain things that she doesn't need to know. She doesn't really want to know. You know, all she really cares about is who I am now and who I'm becoming. And the fact that I mean, she can see the proof that, you know, these things are not issues anymore. You know, the secrecy's not there. You know, and, you know, there's still little glimpses, you know, because you can't repair a decade of mistrust, you know, and deception in 10 months. But, you know, so every once in a while there's a glimpse that, you know, some of that underlying, you know, mistrust may remain, or at least certain things may happen that remind her of other situations that have come up. But for the most part, you know, I get the feeling that she's not nervous about what she's going to walk into when she comes home, or, you know, if I'm in the bedroom and she's not nervous about that.
Or that I can go through drawers or whatever, getting something and not being afraid of what I'm going to find.
Right. And it really, when pornography, or, you know, and let's not even generalize it as that, when lust in general, because that's where it kind of falls, when lust in general overtakes your life, obviously it affects your marriage, it affects you as a person, because you know you're being deceptive, you know you're being unfair, you know you're lying, you know you're sneaking, you know. And then when you have kids, you know you're not being the dad, you know, that you need to be for them, because, you know, you're thinking about putting them down for naps so you can do these things that you want to do, and, you know, or whatever else. And it takes over your life. And when that's not overpowering your life anymore, it's liberating. It really is liberating. You know, I used to carry my phone with me wherever I went. I mean, I could not put it down no matter what. Even if I was sitting down, it had to be in my pocket. And now I leave it out. I mean, I don't even think about it. It doesn't matter to me. And because I know I have nothing to hide, and I always ask myself, you know, if what I'm looking at or what I'm reading or whatever, you know, if my wife saw this, would she be okay with it? And I've, you know, for 10 months now, I've answered yes. And don't get me wrong, you know, the temptations are always, you know, temptations in general in life for everything are always going to be there. They don't go away. Temptation does not go away. That's a human condition. But the big change, and this is why I think it needs to be a Christ-centered recovery, because this is why I don't think one-on-one counseling really works, because it's just you and one person, you know, or, you know, not to say anything against these programs, because I'm sure they work for the people they work for, the AAs, the NAs, and programs like that. But when you learn the tools to deal with the temptation, you know, when you can, and trust me, I used to think early on in this process, and I still am early on in this process, but I used to think really early on in this process, the harder I worked at it, it seemed like the harder it was. And then I realized, then when I kind of kind of stepped back a little bit and didn't work as hard, it seemed like it got easier. Well, when I felt like to myself that it was getting easier, that's when the temptations were coming more, when it was harder to resist. But when I worked it harder, when I did more, when I worked harder, when I studied more, when I prayed more, it gets harder. And I'm not here to sugarcoat it. It gets harder. The harder you work at it, the harder it's going to get, because when you're giving in to the temptations, the devil is quiet. He's very quiet. He doesn't need to say anything to you. He doesn't need to invade you anymore. He's got you. So he's moved on to other things. But when you're trying to get closer to God and you're trying to put these things behind you, that's when the attacks come. And all I can say is the devil is going to attack you because you're strong, not because you're weak. And if you can just stay strong and surround yourself with people and trust your spouse or your significant other, or whoever in your life that you can trust. This is obviously not a condition that is only suffered by married men. There's people that date and or just single people in general. And all I can say is, if you trust that this person that you're with, if they know your deepest, darkest, and they're still willing to stand by you, what is there to be afraid of? Why not put in a little work and move past it? And it, we enjoy, we have the same issues and similar issues, or whatever issues that people have in life, when you have 2 kids and you have jobs with varying schedules and stuff like that. But our issues with our marriage are more about our time together because of 2 kids, because of work schedules and stuff like that. But it's not, when we're together. She doesn't feel that she's sharing me with a computer or something like that, or whatever, mentally or emotionally. And it's something that I've struggled with. I can't even remember a time in my life where I didn't struggle with it, since to date myself, since even before the internet was available in every home, and to go even further back to what she was talking about, it does take somebody to mention the little things and because sometimes we get so caught up in just mentioning the things that annoy us, or the things that disappoint us, or the things that make us mad. And when people hear those things over and over again, they start to think that's how you feel about them. That's the only thing you notice about them.
And I think that that's a very common thing, that people only point out the negatives and they don't point out the positives because they feel like the positive things should just be a given, But why not just say, you know what, I noticed that you mowed the lawn today and I really appreciate that you did that. Or thank you for putting the kids to bed today. That was such a big help. And that's just a little thing that you can do, but it makes them feel appreciated and it makes you feel closer together. And I think that, for men, if you point out good things that they do, they're going to want to keep doing good things, And so it worked for us, and I encourage you to do the same. I've told this to so many of my girlfriends, and they've tried it, and they said that it's been, a blessing on their marriage or their relationship. So it can't hurt.
I guess in closing, or whatever, the only thing I can say is, whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you're engaged, whether you're divorced, whether you're separated, whether you're a father, whether you have no kids, the fact is these things will consume your life. And whatever your drug of choice, alcohol, drugs, pornography, whatever it may be, I can promise you, I live in a small town, and I live in a town full of people that are suffering the same way I am. So I guarantee you, wherever you are, there are people that are going through the same exact thing that you're going through, and that can help you. There is Celebrate Recovery in almost 50,000 locations just in the United States. And I promise you, if you go just once, it'll be worth it. And even if it's not for you, go to AA, go to NA, go to a psychiatrist's office, go to a psychologist's office, go to a counselor's office, go to a church. If you know a church, just go to a church and talk to a pastor one-on-one, just something, because there is no reason to do it alone, and I don't think you can do it alone. I know I can't, and that's why it's so important for me that I don't miss my meetings, because I know I can't do it alone. And it's whatever you got to do, because I can tell you with 100% honesty that 10 months ago I was probably I'd say a few weeks to a few months away from being probably looking for a place to live, having to deal with the fact that someone that I had been with at that point for over 11 years was, I was going to lose them. My son, my daughter, they were going to, I was going to be the part-time dad, and we all know how that works out. And some people make it work, but, even at my worst, the time that I spend with my kids, and anybody would tell you this, the time that I spend with my kids is the most precious thing to me. And if I would have had to give any of that up, I mean, losing her would have been hard enough. That would have been a devastating blow, but losing my kids and having to explain to them why things are the way they are, I don't know where I would be, but I would be in rough shape. I can tell you that much. And I got a long way to go, and I've come a long way in a short time. But it's completely changed the trajectory. This letter changed the trajectory of our relationship. It didn't fix everything. It didn't, all of a sudden everything was just wonderful. But we were headed down one direction, and it changed the trajectory. And every so often, and if you're with someone long enough, every so often you do need something that changes the trajectory of the way you're going. And because it's so easy for life to just get in the way, because even though you're married, you're a couple, you live together, you spend so much time together, you raise kids together, the fact is at the end of the day, you're still two different people.